Welcome, everybody, into another edition of Warm Weather Fans, the Sun Belt podcast. My name is Brian Stone. I am your host. Joined this week, the full crew is here. We got Zeke Palermo, Matt Miguez. We're here to talk about all the action from week 4 in the Sun Belt and then looking ahead to week 5. Boys, we had, I think, two, and pardon my language, we're not an explicit podcast. I think we had 2 holy shit games this week. And we'll talk about both of them, but just 2 results like we never saw coming in a million years. And we'll get to all that. But other than that, before we kind of move on, Zeke, I want to kick it to you first and then over to Matt. How's it going? How are you doing?
I'm doing well. Not a whole lot has changed in my world. It was a really good week of Sun Belt football. I enjoyed that. And it's good to have Matt back. He was feeding the hungry last week. I hear he's going to heal a leper next week. So I'm excited to have him back.
There it is. No, man, I'm doing well. I'm feeling a little under the weather, which is kind of odd for this time. I typically don't get sick in the fall. But hopefully it's just some sinuses or whatever. But anyways, on a football front, I'm sad. The Cajuns gave a good game away. The Saints, who knows? But no, Sun Belt football as a whole, it was a solid weekend. There's no question about it.
Actually, before we move, I did have a question for you, Matt, about the Saints. Did you see the thread? You were at the game. No, this is very superfluous. What's up with different colored numbers on the jerseys?
Yeah, you see, I've heard many people talking about that, but yet I myself haven't been able to see it. I couldn't catch it. So, I mean, I don't really have a take on that, but I have seen the trend from Saints fans where some of the numbers are a slightly different gold than the others.
It looks like some of them are like the traditional Saints gold, and some of the colors are that ugly like mustard gold from the Color Rush era.
Yeah.
That's
which by the way, don't you dare crap on the Saints Color Rush jerseys. That is the best jersey in the entire NFL. Don't you do it. A jersey was incredible.
Thank God Color Rush hasn't existed in 4 years.
Hey,
I agree. I miss the old Jaguars wearing a sand color on a Thursday night with like Blake Bortles wearing a two-toned helmet.
Two-toned helmet.
Playing against Marcus Mariota and the Tennessee Titans. That's golden age of football. Before we get to the games, Zeke, you mentioned Matt healing a leper. Forget healing the leper. He sounds like he needs to heal himself, all things considered. All right. So let's go ahead and jump on the games here. The first holy shit game that I alluded to happened on Thursday. App gets its doors blown off at home at night, conference opener against a South Alabama team that we frankly had pretty tempered expectations for. App didn't play well. Joey Aguilar in particular didn't play well. He completed about half of his passes, 266 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. They get beat 48-14 at home. So I want to start with this. Before we even discuss the game itself, one of the things that I saw, and I was tweeting from the account for the podcast on Thursday, was it seems like a lot of, despite the success that Sean Clark has had there, it feels like people, a certain group of fans within the App fan base have kind of hit their breaking point with him, despite the fact that they were literally just in the Sun Belt title game like less than a year ago. And I just want to kind of get like a temperature check on his seat from you two, because I don't really know where all this stands, because they have very high expectations. And frankly, outside of one outlier season, it feels like, where they, didn't make a bowl, went basically 500, they've been on that level. And now it's like people are done with him after basically one really bad conference loss. So Matt or Zeke, whoever wants to go first, where are we at kind of with his seat check?
Well, look, here's the thing. You brought up the resume, right? And the resume's solid. here's the thing. I get fans might be tired of him. You're always going to have those fans. You're going to have those people that are never satisfied. Dude, I heard people after the South Carolina win for LSU wanting Brian Kelly fired. Brian Kelly, a guy that in his previous 2 seasons had a Heisman Trophy winning quarterback, back-to-back 10-win seasons with one of college football's worst defenses in history. And, oh, yeah, he put him in the SEC championship game in his first year in Baton Rouge. You want to fire that guy? Like, that's just crazy. And so, look, I think it's one of those things where if App has a bad year, say they go 5-7, 4-8, then you can look at it like, okay, well, maybe, we're going in the wrong direction here. But if they continue to go, 8-4, 9-3, look, I understand that expectations in Boone are high, and they should be, but you don't fire a guy after going 8-4.
Yeah, I think he's just kind of there's a shelf life for coaches, right? No matter how successful you are, unless you are like that team's institutional coach, like you are that team, your name, comes before that team. And the only name I can think of right now is like Nick Saban.
Joe Pa.
Like there are coaches that kind of precede their program, right? And unless you are that guy, there is a shelf life. This is Sean Clark's 6th year. How many coaches are getting to year 6, year 7, year 8? So I understand the unrest in that this team has always been like they're always good for the second best team in the conference. They haven't reached that point where they're always winning the Sun Belt. In this expanded college football playoff, they never would have really been in the contention for that if we were to retroactively look back at it. So I understand the unrest just because like their coaches have a certain timeline. And I don't think Sean Clark's one of those guys who's going to spend 18 years at App State and retire there. So to Matt's point, he's performing well, and we've said a lot of things about Sean Clark and his inability to hold leads or his inability to win games he should, but then his converse ability to blow the doors off teams that he shouldn't. For a guy that's been like for a team that's perpetually been the 3rd best team in the conference, I understand the want to move on from him.
I mean, personally, I would say he has a higher ceiling, but he gives me a little bit of like Chad Lunsford coaching Southern vibes, where you had a really in Southern's case, they had a really unsuccessful coach leave, but with App, you had a really successful coach leave with Drinkowitz, and you elevated a guy that because the players liked him and because he coached a really strong position group. And it's kind of the same deal with Lunsford, where the AD there after Summers was just like, hey, you know what? You guys know better than me. I'm just going to hire Lunsford and screw it. And so this feels like the opposite end of that, where it felt like, hey, we're going to reward this guy for, sticking with the program and being around it for a long time. And I don't know. I just think if this type of performance had come after that season where they didn't make the bowl and they lost to Georgia Southern in the finale when Kyle Van Treese played against them and like all of that sort of stuff, I would totally be like, no, I understand. But last year they were just in the Sun Belt title game as the East representative. So that's the part where it gets me is like, if he had 2 down seasons back to back, I would be like, I understand the unrest and pulling the trigger and wanting to do all that. I don't really get it. Like, I would want to see the way that the rest of this season goes before you make a determination one way or the other. What happens if they win out? You know what I mean? Like, they could win the next, hypothetically, I don't actually think this, but they could win the next, 8 in a row. And then you're like, okay, we lost to Clemson by a hundo, but Clemson's a good team. We lost to South Alabama But if you go 8-0 after losing that game, that's an outlier at that point. Or like, you shape into form later in the season and you make a run at the East, representing the East in the title game again. Like, you could be in there against the winner of Louisiana and Texas State. So I feel like to do this in game 4 seems like a little bit of an overreaction because, we've talked about how easy the East is pretty much outside of, I guess, James Madison's the one lone contender left in the East at this point who's like a serious team. So you're in a 2-horse race to make it to the Sun Belt title game, and then you only have to win one. You only have to catch, Texas State on a bad day or catch, Louisiana on a bad day or something like that. Then it's a 1-game series, and yeah, you're probably not going to make the college football playoff because there's more accomplished teams. But I don't know. It just seems too early to kind of make that determination given how last season went. So let's talk about this game individually. So Fluff Bothwell, leader of the Sun Belt All-Name team, went berserk. 116 yards on 14 carries, 2 touchdowns, average 8 yards a carry. Zeke, you love to play the longest runaway game. His longest run was only 22 yards. Yeah. So otherwise, he had 13 carries for 94 yards or so, which is still insane. Gio Lopez was sharp, 16 of 24, 154, 2 touchdowns. I don't know. It just seemed like one of those nights where App literally couldn't do anything correct. Like it was.
Fluff is rough, big dog.
At one point in the game, and I saw this. I think this play got negated by a penalty, but at one point, a snap was high, and Aguilar went to go catch it, but he just kind of volleyball set it like straight up in the air, and a defensive lineman, it landed right in his arms. Now, I think that play was negated by like a false start or something, but that was the type of night they had where literally getting the ball from the center to the quarterback was a hassle. So, well, here's my other question. We talked about Sean Clark. Do you guys see this as like an outlier performance that you think App is going to bounce back from, or do you think this is sort of a sign of things to come for them?
I think the score's certainly an outlier. I think, App sits at 2-2 right now. I feel at this point in the season, 6-6 is thereabouts where they deserve to end up. 7-5, 5-8, so, in that plus or minus 500 range. The score, though, is certainly an outlier. I do think, and we've seen it, Joey Aguilar is too good of a quarterback. They have too many receiving weapons in that receiving room. Caden Robinson is a guy, he had a big game, but like they have too many weapons. App is still trying to find a running back. I've been saying for weeks, I need a one guy to step out there, but App isn't going to be held to 14 every week. I think that was anomalous. But like I said, we've said, I don't think the loss necessarily is an abnormality.
I've heard so many people say, "Oh, maybe App's not as good as we thought. Oh, maybe South Alabama's better than we thought." Look, I'm not gonna say either of those things. I chalk this up to the craziness of the Sun Belt Conference, right? We call it the Fun Belt for a reason. You never know on those weeknight games what the hell's going to happen. Just think back a couple years ago, 2019 maybe, and this is when App was dominant. Going on those dominant, the Cajuns had never beaten App. Played them 6 times in 4 years and had never beaten them. They come to Cajun Field on a Wednesday night, and the Cajuns put up 35 in the first half and beat them 41-13. And we all walked away from that game like, what the hell was that? Like, that's never going to happen again. So it's just one of those games where, look, I guarantee you, if those two teams played each other 4 more times, you would have 4 completely different outcomes. App State probably blows them out in one of those 4, right? It's just one of those games where it happened. It's a freak thing. I don't think it's I don't think that it's a telling point of either team. I think both of them are going to finish middle of the pack in the Sun Belt. But we did learn that South Alabama's offense can put up some points against somebody that isn't Northwestern State.
So, Zeke, Matt kind of gave his opinion. Do you think that this is something South Alabama can/will build on moving forward, or do you think this is kind of just like a one-off?
I think offensively, yes. Obviously, the 87 he mentioned against Northwestern, but even in their first two losses, I mean, they dropped 38 in their loss to North Texas in the season opener. So I think offensively, like, it won't be consistently in the 48 range. It will obviously not reach the 87 mark again, won't come close. But I think South Al could find itself in like that 32 to 36 point range per game. Defensively, I'm not sold. I think this was just an underperformance from App offensively. We can discard the 10 points you allowed to Northwestern State. You allowed 27 to Ohio and then 52 to North Texas. So I think App is going to find itself, or I'm sorry, South Al is going to find itself in above, like a shade above average offense, shade below defense situation, where they just kind of cancel each other out, and they end up as a 7-8 win team right now.
Yeah, they're going to get into a lot of shootouts, and they're not going to win half of them.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so App needs to kind of try to rebound from whatever this was, and South Alabama, has scored 120 something points over their previous two games now.
135.
135. So, again, I don't believe that they're going to put up close to 50 every week, but I think they've proved at least they're going to be a fun team. So, Gio Lopez can sling it.
Mm-hmm.
Can they put 21 on LSU on Saturday night?
Have you watched LSU play lately?
Well, yes, I covered them.
Well, I'm just saying,
yeah,
South Carolina scored a lot with a guy that cannot throw the football. So
yeah, they did. Yeah, they did.
All right. So with that, South Alabama improves to 2-2. They're now 1-0 in conference play. App is now 2-2 and 0-1 in the Sun Belt. Now, starting on Saturday, I'm just reading these games in the order they're presented. We don't have to spend a lot of time, honestly, on these first four because it was a lot of teams playing for a paycheck. So to get to the first one, Texas just absolutely runs UL Monroe out of the stadium, 51-3. Arch Manning gets his first official start as a Longhorn. He threw for 258 and 2 scores. Their running back Blue, 25 carries, 124, 3 touchdowns. This is kind of what I was, not to such an extreme, but this is what I was kind of talking about with how UL Monroe had been running their offense the last couple weeks, which was you guys can't just run the ball and play defense every single week. It will work, but there is a cap talent-wise on this team because of what Bowden left over and where Bryant Vincent's having to take this team from square one and trying to build up. But yeah, this was, it went about exactly to plan. Do you guys have anything else to add? I don't really have anything to add.
No. Good job. You scored 3.
Yeah, you didn't lay a goose egg.
Kicked a sad second quarter field goal to go down. What was it, 28-3 at that point? Great job, everybody. With that, Texas is now 4-0, and UL Monroe drops to 2-1. Another one we don't have to spend a ton of time on. Ohio State welcomed in Marshall, 49-14. Quinshawn Judkins for the Buckeyes, 14 carries, 173, 2 touchdowns. Again, it's just Marshall being Marshall.
Marshall was up 7-0 in the second quarter. Let's give them that.
They hung around for a bit.
Let's give them that.
Which, say what you want about that. They finally got a decent game out of Stone Earl, although he left the game in the third quarter. I think he might have been holding his hand. I haven't seen any news on that. I just saw that he left the game and they kind of didn't mention it. But they finally got a good game out of a quarterback, which is a big deal for this team.
Yep.
Well, you want to talk about things that might not be repeatable. Marshall getting good games out of the quarterback position 2 weeks in a row might not be, especially, isn't it crazy too that the one time that a Marshall quarterback decides to play well, it's in a game against Ohio State when they're vastly overmatched and it
Correct.
didn't end up mattering at all.
Well, the pressure's off.
I guess. It's
You-
like
you
breaking
go
the
in-
seal.
You go in knowing like, bro, I just got to get through these 60 minutes, take my paycheck, and go home. Like,
Well,
there's no pressure.
Yeah, but this is kind of what I mean though, is like, all right, so you played pretty well against Ohio State, but you came away. Stone Earl is now hurt, so you have to go with Braylon Braxton or Cole Pennington, God forbid, and you have to hope that one of those guys. I mean, there's a reason he's like third on
Brian
the depth chart.
hates Cole Pennington.
I don't hate him. He's just not good. Like that's it. He's
Brian
just not.
is the leader. He is the president of the I Hate Cole Pennington Club.
No, you've got this twisted, Matt. Brian dislikes players because they're bad. I dislike players as people because they're bad. You've got it twisted.
Yeah,
Oh,
I think it says a lot that the guy who is Chad Pennington's son can't crack higher than third on the depth chart behind a guy that, number one, we didn't even know was on the roster week one in Stone Earl. And then number two, Braylon Braxton, who should probably be starting anyways, because he was the only one up to this point, literally up until the Ohio State game, that turned in a good performance at all this season at the quarterback spot. So I don't know. Like, can you build off of this if you're Marshall? Maybe. Probably not, though. I mean, let's be honest. It kind of is what it is. All right. Well, if we are good on this one, Ohio State moves to 3-0. Marshall is now 1-2. Next one here, again, Ole Miss beats Georgia Southern 52-13 in the Grove. This one went exactly the way that I thought it would. I mean, I had Ole Miss minus 35, and this was the only time that Georgia Southern ever came within like a millisecond of even being in this game was they got a drive. They threw a halfback pass, which was a trick play, scored a touchdown. It was 17-7. Georgia Southern scored the first touchdown of the season against that Ole Miss has allowed, and they got an onside kick on the ensuing kickoff, and they went 3-and-out and punted, and the game was over from there. That was basically how it went. I mean, it was like, I don't know who Georgia Southern, like, I don't know if they deal with the devil like a long time ago, but every time they schedule one of these SEC schools, it's always like, hey, guess what? We fielded our best team ever. Like a couple years ago, they got to play Joe Burrow and the 2019 LSU Tigers. The year before that, they played Clemson the year they beat Alabama in the national championship game. So, like, we don't get to play, no offense, Zeke, but we don't get to play like Vanderbilt at home. Like, that would be nice. I wish we could do that. Or like, Mississippi State when like they get beat, their doors blown off by like Toledo. Like, we don't get to play those teams. We have to play like a ranked SEC school every time we play a paycheck game.
Sure.
Do you guys have anything? Again, this was over by like half. Georgia Southern just simply doesn't have the guys to cover anybody for Ole Miss. So Ole Miss is now 4-0. Georgia Southern drops to 2-2 with the loss. Again, another whatever. Iowa State blows the doors off of Arkansas State. It's 52-7. I don't know. This game was never close. It was 31-0 at halftime, and it only got worse from there.
Well, hold on. Arkansas State sucks.
I mean,
whoa.
Matt, I don't think this is the week to be pulling that card.
Stop the cow. Stop the cow.
All I'm going to say is a lot of people were really impressed by playing Michigan to 10 points. That was impressive to some, but to real ball knowers, we knew. We knew.
You know ball?
Real ball knowers knew.
Okay. We need to print T-shirts. Real ball knowers know.
Yeah, you see now what happens when Arkansas State plays against a Power 4 opponent that quarterback doesn't throw 3 interceptions. This is what happens.
Yeah.
You know? I mean, there was a reason the spread was like 22 points. You know, they were
Jalen
never
Raynor's
in this game.
Trash.
No, he's good. He's the only good part of that team.
Zeke, I'm making fun of you.
I know, but here's the thing: you're saying exactly what I need to hear.
Can I play devil's advocate for like 2 seconds? And I'm not even sure I totally believe this.
Mm-hmm.
Last week against Michigan, the backup was better. The backup played better than Jalen Rayner.
Put no stock into it. The backup played better than Jalen Rayner in this one too. Put no stock into it.
I don't know, dude. Like, we'll see when they get into conference play, but I don't like even in blowouts and stuff against Power 4 opponents. Like, I don't like the backup outplaying the reigning freshman of the year. You know what I mean? Like, that's just a bad look. It's bad vibes. It's bad optics, whatever you want to call it. It's not great for the outlook of this team.
As is losing 52-7. Also bad optics.
There it is.
Yeah, I know, because my team did almost the exact same thing. Iowa State is now 3-0, and Arkansas State is now 2-2. So getting to the other holy shit performance of the weekend, James Madison goes into Chapel Hill and hangs 53 on the Tar Heels in the first half. Wins this game 70-50. Alonzo Barnett 7 touchdowns. I flipped it over to this game from the Tulane Louisiana game because I couldn't believe what was happening. And every time James Madison had the ball, they were just marching. And it was like, man, North Carolina, like, you get the whole like Mac Brown existential crisis like after this one. I don't know if y'all kept up with that, but he's retired, he's in, he's out, he's asking the players, hey, am I the problem here? Like, that seems like it's only going to end poorly at the end of the season. But wow, what a performance for James Madison. Like, all kudos, all credit go to you guys, because like nobody saw this coming.
So here's what's wild. If you didn't watch this game and you just look at it and go, oh, they got into a shootout and James Madison won. But then you look at the stats. North Carolina's quarterback threw for 475 and 3 touchdowns. And then their running back, Omarion Hampton, ran for $140 and 3 scores. So they were the leading passer of the game and the leading rusher of the game, but yet lost by 20. I mean, what a performance for James Madison to really come out early, go to Chapel Hill, come out early and dominate, put up 25 in the first quarter, up 11 in the first quarter break, and say, yeah, you know, we're not done yet. We're going to score 28 more in the second quarter and make it 53-21 at the break. I mean, that's just insane. If I was Mac Brown at halftime, I'd have went to the referees and been like, can we go home? Can we be done?
So, Zeke, before you kind of give your 2 cents, I have just 2 things I wanted to add real quick. Number one, James Madison could have basically ended. They could have put all their backups in and just ran the ball every play in the second half, and they still would have won 53-50 because they had outscored UNC the first half for the entire game. And number two, you just gotta love this goes for everybody who like roots for Georgia Tech or even like cursory follows Georgia Tech. Their defensive coordinator is Jeff Collins, who used to be the Georgia Tech head coach and was maybe one of the worst coaches in the FBS. And he's got to be on the way out. Like, if Mac Brown doesn't step down and then they can the whole staff, he's got to be the sacrificial lamb because this was unacceptable for them.
Does UNC have some sort of, something or other for playing crazy games against Sunbelt? Because
a fetish.
They must.
I didn't know if we were allowed to say that, Brian.
I mean, that's basically what it is.
I mean, because think about the app games in recent years. There was the double overtime 2 years ago, and last year it was just like this, where both teams put up like 67, 61 points.
Yeah.
Is there just some weird Chapel Hill mojo coming from that, or something's got to be going? Because UNC doesn't play other teams like this. This isn't like UNC has just the most paper-thin defense in the world and also can score a bazillion points. They're a fairly normal football team.
No, just against competition.
It's so bizarre. I urge people to not put stock into this, buy the hype on James Madison here, because this was a performance, the best Sunbelt performance, at least offensively, that we'll see all year. Without question. Believe in that aspect of James Madison, but do not overreact and turn this into I don't overcorrect and start thinking that this JMU team is, say, comparable to last season's in terms of overall talent. I don't think that's what this performance is. It's a ridiculous win, the best win this team has had, like the most impressive win this team has had since they joined the FBS. But this is not to say that they are ACC quality better than UNC. But this is to tell you, as Brian, you said earlier, they're clearly the only real dog in the East right now.
Well, the other thing too is, I know there's probably a lot of James Madison fans who are like victory lapping right now, being like, "See, we told you." But the other thing too, and you could have Batman in a room interrogating those people, and you'd be like, "Do you really believe that Alonzo Barnett is going to do this every single week?" And they would be like, "No, not really." I mean, I'm sorry. Like, he has to say he's not come close to this type of performance to this stage in the season is kind of an understatement. I don't know if he broke 200 yards passing before this game, because some of the other performances, like they scored 13 points against Gardner-Webb like 2 weeks ago. And I know that they had like 2 weeks to prepare, but that's not going to be the case every single week.
Right.
And then the other thing too is like, I think what it is with North Carolina, I think they just overlook anybody who isn't like a Power 4 team. I think that's the only real explanation. It's like, for whatever reason, Mac Brown can't get through to specifically the defense, because the offense has always been able to score points, whether it was Drake May or Chris Well or whoever. But now it's just like they just don't play a lick of defense. So, again, he's having currently an existential crisis and doesn't even know if he wants to coach again, and they're having to like goad him back into the building, I guess, or whatever that was about. But yeah, I mean, I think it's just a thing of he's not getting through to his players for whatever reason. And JMU obviously I think played way above their heads. Now I do think they're the only real contender in the East besides App, but still, like, nobody can tell me, hey, I saw Barnett putting up 7 touchdowns and he's going to do that every week from here on out. It's like, no, he's not. So you can go ahead and stop the cap, as the kids say. So anyway, do we have any last minute thoughts before we move on to the next game here?
It's concerning that you're trying to be hip.
I'm not trying to be hip. I'm just quoting the kids.
The kids.
What kids?
People who are much younger than me.
Okay, boomer.
Okay. Anyway, James Madison is now 3-0, and North Carolina is now 3-1 this season. Matt, you can take us through this next one. So you survived what was Dante's Inferno in this game, because it was what did you say on the field? It was 130 at one point.
At one point on the ESPN broadcast, they took one of those little thermometers and they pointed it at the black turf on the outside of the end zone, and it read 138.9.
That doesn't seem safe for humans.
No,
It feels like there comes a point where we kind of have to put football aside a little bit and go, is this bad for us as humans? Are we all going to get melanoma?
Could you imagine wearing a full set of pads and a helmet and just hitting each other for 4 hours in that? Ugh.
Could you imagine having to put sunscreen on before you go play football?
Yeah, no kidding, right? So I know that as somebody who grew up in South Louisiana, this may sound a little dramatic. Standing down there on the field was probably the hottest I've ever been in my life.
I believe it.
Yeah.
It was incredibly brutal. And I was only down there for the first quarter, and then I went back for the fourth quarter. I went up into the press box for the second and third quarter because I just couldn't take it anymore. But look,
hold on. One quick question. Why did you go back down? Do you like pain, or were you required to be down there? Like, what was the deal?
I like to be down on the field for the fourth quarter. It's just kind of always been a thing I do, and so I wasn't going to let the heat stop me from my usual routine because I'm a dog like that. But anyways, moving on.
Zeke, look, I guarantee you Matt sweated all the way through his shirt, easily.
It had to have been. Shoot, man, you're stronger than I am.
It looked like Matt was in a wet T-shirt contest when he was done. I guarantee it.
And I want it. But anyways, moving on. Look, it's one of those things where you hear the coach cliche, you can't spot a good team points. And that's exactly what happened, right? The Cajuns spotted a good team, 14 points, and Tulane made you pay for it. You take away that pick six, almost immediately followed by a 94-yard kickoff return for a touchdown to open the second half, and the Cajuns probably get out of there with a win. To be completely honest with you, because, you look at the way the Cajuns played, I don't think that the Cajuns played poorly. Now, do I think that they played well? No. I think the offense could have been much better than what it was. Ben Wooldridge looked a little off, went 19 of 35, I believe, was his passing statistics. Couldn't really get a running game going outside of Elijah Davis. And, 73 of those yards came on one play, like Zeke likes to take away. And so it's just one of those things where the offense didn't really do enough. And then defensively, you gave up 270 yards on the ground. Now, I said going into the season that I thought Mekhi Hughes was one of the best running backs in the G5, if not the country. And he showed that on Saturday, running for 168 yards and a touchdown. But the Cajuns are just, I don't know. It just feels like this team finds ways to let these big momentum games get away. And I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's the coaching staff or if it's just kind of the stigma around the pro. I don't know. But these big games at home, they seem to let them slip away. And Coach Des was very fired up after the game, really animated in the post-game press conference. But look, they've got a good opportunity, and obviously we'll talk about it when we preview Week 5. But they've got a good opportunity to go on the road against a really down ACC program in Wake Forest. God, they're only a 3-point underdog on the road at an ACC school. You better take that and run with it. So you go win this game, a lot of people will forget about Tulane.
As Zeke likes to say, quarterback factory Wake Forest.
Quarterback factory Wake Forest?
You said that at one point.
No, I know, and I realized where the confusion was coming from. I was confusing them with Purdue, which also not really
yeah.
not a quarterback factory, but they have Drew Brees,
the goat,
and
Debatable.
Kyle
the
Orton.
goat,
And Kyle Orton. I'll spread you that. Yeah.
Oh, thanks. I think that's where that idea came from. At like throwing 8-yard passes.
So
okay.
anyway, back to this game. He's not. Back to this game. No, he's not.
No.
No. So
No.
yeah, no. So I will say this. So I watched the very beginning of this one.
He's not.
He's not.
Shut up, Zeke.
So he's not. So
you
anyway,
too.
You're right. The GOAT is definitely not the guy with 7 Super Bowls. It's definitely the guy with 1 for sure. Anyway, so I watched the first part of this game and I really thought Louisiana was doing a hell of a job hanging in there, and I thought they were going to end up taking it. And then, full disclosure, I couldn't watch the full game. I had my child's birthday party was Saturday, so I had to break for that. So I was in and out of the house watching games or whatever. And then I just turned around and it was 38-26. And I was like, oh, I see what Tulane, cut it on a little bit. So,
Yeah, I mean, things really flipped with that pick six. And I hated it because, you go back and you rewatch it and it was literally the simplest miscommunication. The tight end was running an option route, and the tight end cut the route off, and the quarterback thought he was going to continue it. And so literally just the most simple miscommunication. And it really ended up costing you the game. But, those types of things happen.
That's the danger with those option routes, is like if the quarterback and the receiver aren't totally mind melded, like on the same level, it can go so poorly. And I've seen it firsthand, having rooting for New England back when Belichick was the coach. They ran all option routes. Like that was the whole offense. And you could tell it was like if a quarterback was on the same level with Brady, like mentally, it was like, 2 people playing music that had never met before, and it was like a symphony.
Right.
And when it goes poorly, it's like interception city, and where the hell did that ball go? And where was he taking off to? So yeah, no, I definitely, I will say I was really encouraged by the way Louisiana played in this game, because I told Zeke last week on the episode, I said, who better to plan against Louisiana than John Summerall, who just spent 2 years at Troy, coaching against Louisiana both times. So I was pretty encouraged by the way they played overall, because I'm pretty high on Tulane overall. But I think there's a lot of good that you can take away from this and really build on it. So
yeah,
with that,
Tulane's the real deal, no question.
Yeah, no, I'm very high on them. Tulane is now 2-2 with the victory. Louisiana drops to 2-1. Getting into another one here, Virginia takes Coastal Carolina to the woodshed, 43-24. This one was 27-10 at half. That was basically it. Vasco, again, didn't play all that well. Completed less than half of his passes, 222 yards and 1 touchdown. Brown, Virginia's running back, 9 carries, 171 yards. Their defense is a real concern. I know that they weren't supposed to win this game, but defensively, I have real questions, and kind of with Vasco too. Like he looked good early, and he's just kind of regressed every game almost. So we'll see. I mean, we'll see if he ends up, building off of something, but he seems to have gotten worse every week since they beat Jacksonville State almost.
That was my big takeaway from this game, is that obviously there was going to be a regression from Grayson McCall, even if Coastal weirdly kind of looked better without him last year. There was obviously going to be a regression. But Ethan Vasco cannot decide whether he wants to be Grayson McCall or if he wants to be Cole Penny.
2024 Grayson McCall.
Yeah, exactly. So this flipping is obviously not helping. And he eventually got pulled in this game for Noah Kim, who played equally as poorly. Coastal's not going to do anything until, much like Marshall, like the rest of it doesn't matter if you can't just have a guy. Like he doesn't have to be stellar, but he has to be good enough. And Vasco flipping between a 70% passer that's, getting 250 yards and a guy who completes under 50% of passes with a 1-to-1 touchdown interception, that can't fly, especially in this offense. Coastal has to figure this. Much like Marshall, I think everything else has to come to a halt, all of their discussion, until they figure this out. I don't know. That's just a greater thesis on college football, but that's what's plaguing them right now.
That was sort of my concern last year about Tim Beck, which was I felt like last year was not really a great barometer to hold him up against because, again, you just gift somebody, the de facto. I mean, at the time going into the season, we didn't know how good Jordan McLeod would end up being for JMU, but you gift a guy basically the de facto best quarterback in the conference. Yeah, he probably should win 8 games or whatever, however many they ended up winning. Now, I will say it was strange that it seemed like the team sort of picked it up after McCall's injury, but now we're just kind of back to where I was originally, which was I asked you this last week about Troy's new head coach. Tim Beck came from NC State. Have you ever been thrilled with NC State's offense?
Mm-mm.
That's what I mean. Is like if you're going to bring a guy in who's an OC or a DC or whatever, you have to at least on film look at stuff and go, hey, there are wrinkles they throw in here and there that maybe not everybody has. And I haven't seen that with Tim Beck. Like it seems very like vanilla,
Yeah.
and it's like,
which is funny that Coastal is, because Coastal's coming from Chadwell and, one of the more unique offenses with his like spread option where, it's kind of Rich Rod-esque where they're running the ball a ton, but they have a very good quarterback game. So I think that was an odd transition to make, kind of like when Southern went from complete option to we're going to throw the ball 40 times a game. Just like kind of against the whole ethos of what the school's football identity has become.
Well, I mean, I don't want to get into like the nuances or whatever, but the reason that Southern did it was because blocking rules have changed and have deterred teams from running the option. So between that and nobody else knowing how to run this scheme, apparently, other than Willie Fritz, like it just became like we have to do something different. We literally don't have the ability to run this offense anymore. And so I think that's kind of what it's been about Coastal is like the offense for Chadwell was so unique. Like, how do you find somebody to follow that up and be like, but I just don't. Like, I don't feel this way about Troy's head coach. I don't feel this way about Tim Beck. Like, getting these Power 4 OCs that run very vanilla offenses, like, what about that makes you feel like, oh, well, we're going to definitely have an edge? You know what I mean? It was like, okay, Tim Beck's got a recruiting, footprint in the Carolinas, having coached at NC State. That's great. But you're not going to be competing with the Power 4 when you're going to get recruits for Coastal. Like, that's just not how it works. So you combine that again with a very vanilla offense, and you're just kind of like, where are we supposed to go from here? So,
would you rather, like, what is your preferred option, right? Because you can hire, a former P5 head coach. You can try to get a guy laterally. Like, what is your preferred move there then? Like in terms of previous job,
an FCS head coach that has had success.
You think that's number one?
Well, I mean, look at what Bob Chesney's doing at JMU.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
versus
Look at
Troy's
what
head coach.
He's doing at Texas State.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so weird to me, and this applies to Southern too, but like it's so weird to me that you look at these guys that have not really had success at their previous stops and you bring them on board and you're like, it's going to be different here because reasons. Like that seems such like a strange idea to hire a guy to be like, hey, this guy didn't really have success at Notre Dame, or this guy, Gerard Parker didn't really have success offensively at Notre Dame. Tim Beck didn't really have offensive success at NC State. It's going to change here. Why? Because, and it's just like, what? I don't understand that. But when you bring an FCS coach up, you not only get their entire coaching staff, because everybody, unless they are made now the FCS head coach of the previous team, they all want pay raises. They all want more notoriety coaching at the FBS level. They have, systems that they have seen. And heck, if you're GJ Kinney or you're, whoever, you can bring some of those guys with you over from the FCS team that have had success in your system. So like, it just seems like such a no-brainer that I don't understand why these ADs almost make it harder on themselves than they have to.
Yeah, I agree with Brian. I want an FCS head coach that has had P5 or not even P5, just FBS, like maybe coordinator experience or was a position coach in the FBS. I want a guy that has cut his teeth in the FBS, but his most recent stop was an FCS head coach that has had success. Yes.
Yeah, because again, you get a guy that can bring an entire staff over. Correct. And you literally can't say that anywhere else because some of these guys, whether you want to admit it or not, the Rolodex is a little thin because they haven't coached anywhere other than maybe a few stops, and then now they've become an FCS head coach. So, correct. You bring over a coordinator like Tim Beck, and you're like, okay, who's your DC? Well, we can't go get NC State's DC. Like, we have to figure something else out. So that's just kind of the thing for me. But anyway, Virginia improves to 3-1 with the victory. Coastal Carolina drops to 3-1. Southern Miss just ooh baby. Just absolutely gets demolished by a Jacksonville State team that had gotten demolished in the season opener by Coastal. 44-7. Yeah, I think Will Hall, I wouldn't be surprised if they, we talked about the bye weeks and how it would make like for a good time to fire him. I'm surprised he wasn't out of a job after this game, to be quite honest. Matt, do you have anything else to add other than the Looney Tunes sound effect that you just dropped?
Does that not sum it up?
No, it does. Can you believe he still has a job?
I think the reason that he still has a job is because they don't. I feel like their athletic director, Jeremy McLean, is his name. I think.
I don't know his name.
I feel like their athletic director is kind of looking like, okay, if we fire him, who will we hire? And he doesn't like any of the options. He's not a fan of any of the options. So it's like, we'll wait. Maybe somebody pops up, week 8. So we don't have to do this right now.
I don't understand it. There are FCS head coaches that would kill to get an FBS paycheck. And these teams are like, no, I'd rather get a retread, or I'd rather grab a coordinator that runs an offense for a team that is very boring. That'll solve all our problems.
Like, look at Southern Miss's schedule. Congratulations, you beat Southeastern Louisiana. Like, good for you. You got your doors blown off by Kentucky, which, SEC program, sure. South Florida took you to the woodshed. And then Jacksonville State literally just dropped your pants to your ankles, bent you over, and
I was about to say, where is this going?
Good God.
Like, just destroyed you. Absolutely destroyed you. Like the old wooden paddle days in elementary school. Beat you with a wooden paddle. I mean, this was horrible to watch. I don't know if either of you watched any of it.
No, I didn't.
I watched a couple possessions because that was all I could stomach. It was horrid football. From Southern Miss's point, I should say.
So, two things. Number one, so what you're telling me is Tate Rodemaker didn't solve all of their quarterback
Oh, God,
issues.
no. God, no.
So the second thing is, and this is going to blow you guys' minds, Will Hall's not going to go down as the worst coach in Southern Miss's program history.
No, he won't.
No, because I think it was, what was it, Ellis Johnson came in
Yeah.
and went 0-12 and like almost killed their entire football program by not winning a single game. So by default of beating Southeast Louisiana, Will Hall's already better than he is.
In light of the news today, does Brett Favre make a better Deion Sanders type coach than Will Hall?
I mean, anything would be better than Will Hall at this point.
But here's
they would owe him 200. They would owe him 200,000 with a buyout. His contract ends at the end of the year. That has to be the only reason. Just wait it out, stomach it. It's not like another bad season is gonna, catastrophically alter the trajectory of this program.
Zeke, I raise a question. I raise a question to you, Zeke, based on that conversation. Mm-hmm. Can Brett Favre be hired as a public employee in the state of Mississippi after his welfare mess?
Wait. Wait, can I offer a solution to everybody's problems right now? Brett Favre gets hired as head coach of Southern Miss, but he pays the team.
Yes.
So like he pays for his time?
Yeah. No, he basically reimburses the state for, what was it, the volleyball court or whatever it was that he stole the funds for? Okay, so he uses his NFL money and he pays the team back or the state back or whatever while he's a member of the team or like the coach.
I think that's an incredible idea.
That's interesting.
State problem solved.
That's interesting.
We did it. We solved embezzlement.
We fixed Southern Miss football. You're welcome, Hattiesburg.
I just fixed embezzlement for like everybody. It's like you keep working at the company you embezzled from, but you pay them instead of them paying you. That's how it works. All right. Anyway, Jacksonville State is now 1-3 with the victory, and now Southern Miss is 1-3 with the loss. Last game here, we can breeze through this one. Troy beats Florida A&M. Whoop-de-doo. Throw yourselves a party. Your Goose Crowder played in place of Caldwell. He played well, but again, Florida A&M, like, how does this translate moving forward? It doesn't. It's basically the easiest way to put
it. They play ULM this upcoming week, and we'll talk about that in a second. But I don't know. This could be the start of like a stronger second half. I'm not going to say a great second half, but there's a platform for this to have been a get right game.
I think you're relating. I think you have recency bias because South Alabama beat Northwestern State by 1 billion, and now you're like, well, all you got to do is beat an FCS school by 100 points, and then you turn the ship around, and it's like, no, I don't think it works plausible. Like that. I don't think it works like
that's
that.
Very realistic.
All right. So with the win, Troy is now 1-3, and Florida A&M drops to 2-2. Let's get to this week's games. No Thursday game this week. I'm sure App is praying to the heavens that they're glad that they don't have to play on a Thursday again for a while. At 1:30 on ESPN Plus, James Madison is welcoming in Ball State. James Madison is 20.5 point favorite. Over unders 57.5. It's a lot of points, but I'm taking James Madison solely because, and Ball State could be much better. I don't know. Georgia Southern last year played Ball State with the most turnover-prone quarterback in all of the country and blew the doors off of Ball State. I think it was also in Indiana, so it wasn't even a home game that we did that. With that said, I don't think Ball State has made a huge turnaround in the span of a year. The only thing that gives me pause, and I almost went with Ball State plus 20.5, is that Alonzo Barnett, the clock strikes midnight and he turns back into a pumpkin. That's the only thing that gives me like serious pause. It's like, what if this goes exactly like the Gardner-Webb game and the final of this one is like 20-17, and you're just like, why did I believe in this?
I like Ball State to cover here. Initially, when I was writing down some notes for this, I picked JMU minus 20.5 because as sort of a like, here you go, guys. You know, this is your chance to prove that you're back. You are better than initially anticipated. But as I think back to the Gardner-Webb game, even to the Charlotte game in the opener, with the exception, I mean, shoot, even UNC, JMU doesn't just romp teams. No matter competition, at least thus far this season, it's within 15, I guess 20 against UNC, but it's a tighter game. Based just on that, 20 is just too rich. Give me Ball State, but JMU straight up.
Matt,
I'm gonna agree with Zeke there. I'll take the Cardinals on the points, but JMU to win.
okay. 3:00 ESPN Plus. Texas State is traveling to Houston. They will be playing at the Texan Stadium, facing off against Sam Houston. Did they drop the state? It used to be Sam Houston State.
Yeah,
that's new to me. I didn't know.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, anyway, now Sam Houston. Texas State is an 8-point road favorite. Over under is 55.5. I don't know anything about Sam Houston, so I'm gonna decline to bet on the side either way. I'm just gonna take the over of 55.5. I think at their absolute best, Texas State is not shutting teams out. Like, they score a lot of points, but they also defensively have a lot of holes, especially in the secondary. So I'm taking the over, and I don't have to worry about it.
I like the over as well. Despite Sam Houston having a bit of a stingy defense, they've put up some impressive defensive performances, but against some pretty putrid teams: Rice, Hawaii, New Mexico State. When they played UCF, which is far more comparable to Texas State than Rice is, they lost 45-14. Give me the over. I think Texas State scores 49 on their own.
I'm going to take the over as well. Both of these teams are capable of putting up points. Humphreys is a really good wide receiver for Sam Houston. I like the way that he plays. But in the end, I think Texas State's going to pull this one out. But 8, I don't like the line. I'm not going to touch that. So just give me the over.
Here's the thing. I love the line too. I love both of them.
Well, you're not exactly an impartial observer here.
No.
I will say the thing about Humphreys, the thing that's crazy to me is he has 10 catches this year and 3 of them for touchdowns. So 30% of his catches are touchdowns, which is not a ton of volume, but that's Matt, going to you, that's a Rashid Shaheed stat line if I've ever seen one.
There we go. Attaboy.
All right, so next one here, speaking of Matt, ACC Network, 3:30 p.m., Louisiana is traveling to Winston-Salem to take on Wake Forest. Wake is a 3-point home favorite. Over under is 60.5.
Where's he going?
Oh, God.
Is he getting the helmet?
Oh, okay.
The helmet.
I thought with that prison metaphor he had earlier, I was kind of scared where we were taking this show. All right. I think I know Matt's pick. I'm going to take Wake. I don't feel good about it, but
this man pulls a Pat Mack.
I don't feel good about it at all. Like, I've seen Hank Bachmeier play when he was at Boise, and he is like the poor man's Kellen Moore, and this is going back like a long time, but he's left-handed. He kind of throws ducks, like he doesn't have the strongest arm. But I'm just gonna I'm gonna close my eyes, hold my nose, and I'm gonna take Wake and just hope it all works out, I guess.
Yeah, I agree.
Zeke.
No, I know. Let me hear me out. Let me explain.
Quarterback factory.
Quarterback factory. I don't know. Here's the thing. If I knew more about Wake Forest, I could give you it probably would swing the other way. But Wake, all they've done is trample an FCS team, lose to Virginia, and then get trampled by Ole Miss. We have no real litmus test for them. We also, I would argue, have no strong litmus test for Louisiana yet. Their only real game here against Tulane, they played pretty well, as we talked about. But other than that, the Kennesaw and Grambling games, you can't learn a ton from. I begrudgingly, hear me when I say this, Matt, very reluctantly have to default to Wake. I don't feel great about it. This is one of those that, frankly, I don't, and again, disclaimer, I don't put any money on any of these. So please don't heed my advice because I'm certainly not following it. But this is one I would particularly stay away from because I just don't I don't have it from UL. What have they shown me? I would love for them to win, but what have they given me, man?
I think the real question is, in theory, how would Tulane stack up against Wake? And that's how kind of you could determine how you feel about UL in this game. Like, would Tulane beat Wake?
Do you not think that Tulane would beat Wake?
I think Tulane would beat Wake. Shoot, Matt brings a good argument here. I think Tulane would beat Wake.
Yeah, I mean, would Tulane not beat Wake Forest?
Again, I don't know. Wake hasn't really played anybody. So
I mean, I could show you an argument that Tulane should have beaten Kansas State.
Yeah, but I mean, we can't do this. But Kansas State just lost by 1 million against BYU. That looks impressive every day. All right. Another 3:30 kick, ESPN Plus. I'm gonna have this one on my laptop because I want to see this game play out. Liberty is traveling to Boone to take on an App team that's kind of licking its wounds. Liberty is a 3-point road favorite. Over under is 60.5. I'm taking the over. Nothing I saw about App's defense made me feel good. I think Liberty is a little better than you guys were giving them credit for kind of in the preseason by being like they play in a crap conference and don't play anybody. I do agree with that, but I do also think when you look at App and you look at Liberty and you go, okay, which one is probably closer to being a complete team at this stage? I would say Liberty, but I don't feel great. The points aren't enough to sway me, but I do think both teams will score at the very least. So I'll take over 60.5.
Give me Liberty, and I'm going to tell you why.
Or give you death.
Oh, God, okay. Okay. No, here's the thing. I saw a tweet earlier today, and it said that if Liberty were to beat App State, it would be the first time since 2014, so their first year in the FBS, that App State has lost back-to-back home games. And the two teams they lost to in 2014 were South Alabama and Liberty. You can't make that up. Football history, the gods are on the side of the Flames. Give me Liberty on the road.
I agree. I'm not quite as poetic about it, but I do agree that Liberty wins here. I think 3 points is very generous to App. I think my frustration with this game is like, bro, this is the year Liberty has to play App. As we talked about the optics earlier, I think App is going to come out of this game not looking good. And from a conference perspective, everyone's going to be looking at them and like, really? You're supposed to be one of our, and even if on the off year, you're supposed to be one of our shining prizes, one of our best and brightest, and you're just gonna go and get walked by Liberty. The timing on this is very poor. Give me Liberty.
Yeah, I mean, considering the conference they play in, I mean this seems like the game of the season for Liberty.
It's the only
Whereas
team they play.
Right. And for App, it's just like, yes, we would like to win, but the way that last week turned out, it's like outside of a miracle happening, like you guys aren't going to be the G5 representative in the playoff.
Mm-mm.
So, like, again, it matters to them, I'm sure, but a couple of things that are in Liberty's favor. Number one, Chadwell being the coach. He knows how to scheme against App. He's seen them, numerous times when he was at Coastal. And I think this game means a lot more to a 4-0 Liberty team that needs to probably go undefeated in order to have a shot to make the playoff. Whereas App has kind of already removed itself from the race. And if they lose another game, they're all but done with the race. But right now they're only 0-1 in the conference. So I think right now they've kind of lowered their sights a little bit and said, hey, we're going for a conference title now. A playoff just doesn't seem realistic or feasible at this point. All right. 3:30 ESPNU. Zeke, our teams are facing off Georgia Southern, Georgia State in the dumbest...
the Georgia Grown Bowl.
Matt, you heard about this, right?
Yeah, how y'all can't call it the hate or whatever it was called.
Oh my god.
Well, did you see how it all, like, why it played out the way it did?
So poor.
Not really. All I saw
Okay.
was the letter from was it the state representative who wrote the letter?
So what happened was Friday morning, Ben Moore, like the lead Georgia State beat guy, posts on the message boards and on Twitter an email that presumably was sent to media or internally. I didn't receive it. I'm on their mailing list, but didn't receive it, so I don't know who it was sent to. From their SID, their media comms person, Georgia State's comms person. And
was it?
Said,
hold
hey,
on 1 second.
Was
it not from the AD?
The email was from Ansley, the SID, but she said she was passing the message along from the AD, and the message was, "Hey guys, don't call this game hate. We don't condone hate against any other institution. We don't like that." And that came out like 9, 10 a.m. in the morning. I don't know when the email was sent, but that's when it hit the public. That's when it hit the message boards and Twitter. And everyone universally clowned on by both sides of the rivalry, by the way. Just like, what are we doing? Ignore it. You as a school don't have to use that word, but what are we doing? Afternoon, early evening is when both schools and then the department commissioner of agriculture come out and say, oh, by the way, we've named this bowl game. And Georgia State comes out of this looking like morons, because if you just said nothing and then announced, oh, by the way, we're going to call this the Georgia Grown Bowl, this is a non-story, but you had to come out and play it so sheepish. And they were like, oh, guys, we don't like the word hate.
Okay, so I have two questions. Number one, why is it called the Georgia Grown Bowl?
Because it's sponsored.
It's sponsored by the Department of Ag. Georgia Grown is a Department of Ag thing that just promotes agribusiness in the state.
Okay.
Also,
so that makes total sense.
Just a side note, I don't love the idea of rivalry trophies between two teams being sponsored. That seems stupid. It seems like profit above all else, which I know college football is all about profit.
I was about to say,
come on, man.
Do you not know what sport we're talking about?
Yeah, but think of any rivalry trophy you can. Are any of them a cash grab? Okay, so that's my point. Is we can't. We can't
I agree with you.
Pure.
I'll say we've talked about for years how weak this rivalry is, how relatively little people seem to care about it, especially on the southern side, because y'all's biggest rival isn't State, it's App.
It's App.
And our second biggest rival is a team we don't play anymore, which was Furman.
So
like if we played Furman tomorrow, there would be way more hate from people who have followed the team for like 10 plus years than anybody has ever showed towards State.
I think the only rationale here, and we've spent way too long than needs to be talked about this stupid bowl name, but the only rationale here is to legitimize the rivalry and like really put it in concrete and give you something to talk about. With all that said, Georgia State, ignore the win against Vandy. That was a trap game. They looked bad against Chattanooga. They looked bad in the opener. Give me Southern.
I agree.
I'm taking Southern as well, plus 3.5. They don't typically play well on the road, and if this was still a Darren Granger team, I would be probably on State. But until I see like State really put up a good fight in one of these types of games, like conference wise, I'm gonna have to see it before I believe it. So, and I'll say this: if Georgia Southern leaves this game 2-3, and their conference loss to open the slate is against Georgia State, I think we're inching, and not even inching, we're on a speed run to get Clay Helton out of Statesboro. Because I don't think you can. You barely beat Nevada on the last play, which was a Hail Mary that landed at the 5 that someone caught. You looked bad against South Carolina State. Now that game, the final score looks better than the actual game does. You get your doors blown off by Boise and Ole Miss, which is whatever. But you can't lose this game if you're Southern. If you're Clay Helton and you want to keep your job, you have to find a way to win this game. And there's not as much pressure on Del McGee because it's year 1. So that's kind of where I'm at with it. Next game here, Marshall at 3:30 ESPN Plus is welcoming in Western Michigan. Marshall is a 3.5 point favorite at home. Over unders 54.5. I'm gonna take the under. I don't see where Marshall's gonna score the points.
Yep.
I don't see where either of them are gonna score the points. Also, again, sidebar, I know we're running long here. Western Michigan, Central Michigan, Eastern Michigan, all 3 teams, every time I see them, I have to check whether they're in the FBS or not.
Well, all 3 of them are, so you don't have to check anymore.
Now you know. And
they're those teams like, what are they doing, man?
Yeah.
2 of them are in the MAC.
Where's the third?
Eastern and Central, both in the MAC.
What would Western be in?
Western is too.
Western's in the MAC also?
All 3 of them are in the MAC.
That's pretty cool. I messed with that.
I didn't know about Western, but all
right. So we're all on the under, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Easy.
Okay. All right. 5 o'clock ESPN Plus. Old Dominion is traveling to Ohio to take on a pretty frisky Bowling Green team. I don't know if you guys have been keeping up at least cursory with how Bowling Green's played this year. Bowling Green is a 9.5 point home favorite. Over unders 51.5. Give me Bowling Green. Yep. Old Dominion will find a way to lose this game by 3 points, and I'll hate myself. But I can't. You know how, Zeke, you say you can't go broke taking a profit. Like you can't get rich betting on Old Dominion. Yeah. So that's how I see it.
I agree with you, Brian.
Bowling Green.
I'll take Bowling Green.
Okay. 7 p.m. ESPN Plus. UL Monroe is traveling to Troy to take on the Trojans. Troy is kind of surprising to me, a 7 point home favorite. Over unders 45.5. I'm taking UL Monroe. I think they could win this game straight up.
Yeah, that pains me. That pains me. As I sit here drinking out of my Warhawk themed cup.
Oh, that's dope.
Got it at the World War II Museum in New Orleans. If you've never been, you should absolutely go check it out. But anyways, give me ULM.
Give me ULM. I think if it weren't for Liberty App And then, honestly, UL Wake Forest, despite how much we hemmed and hawed, not a terribly interesting game to me. I think this is the second most interesting game of the week because ULM, like, this is your chance to prove you're not the basement, and Troy, this is your chance to prove it's all been a fluke.
Yeah. And
sure.
Zeke, if you believe that Troy is truly going to springboard off of that Florida A&M win, this is the time to show it.
This is your only chance to.
Right. Last game of the night, 7:45 SEC Network. South Alabama's traveling to take on LSU in Baton Rouge at night. LSU is a 22.5 point favorite. Over under is 65.5. I'm going to go under 65.5. I think South Alabama comes back to earth. LSU, for as good as they are, makes sometimes scoring points look difficult. And they're losing more players with injuries by the day. They just lost that pass rusher, right, Matt, for the season. I can't think of his name.
Yep.
Yeah, Perkins.
Perkins.
Yeah, I think LSU does find a way to contain Gio Lopez, and I think this is kind of like a 31-10 type of game for me.
I hope everyone goes out there, has fun, and no one gets hurt.
So I will be in attendance in Baton Rouge on Saturday night. Look, I think this is going to be a game where kind of similar to LSU Nichols a couple weeks ago. If anybody paid attention to that one, where Nichols hung around for 2.5 quarters. I think South Alabama is going to do the same. I think they're going to make things interesting. I think they're going to make LSU fans sweat a little bit. But then in the end, Garrett Nussmeier and the offense they're just going to be too much. And they'll make it a 14-point game. I'll take LSU straight up.
Zeke, what's your pick?
That Gio Lopez gets pulled before the third quarter. Give me the under.
Okay. Chance for a Fluff Bothwell legacy game in this one. So we'll see how it goes.
Fluff Bothwell, baby. Let's go.
Fluff Bothwell. All right. So that pretty much wraps up this episode. Do you guys want to go ahead and let people know where they can find you on socials and all of that jazz, and then we'll go ahead and get out of here?
You can find me on social media at MiguezMatt. We just ordered Warm Weather Fans stickers. We're going to come up with a plan on how you could win/get yourself one. So stay tuned for that on our social media. But they look really dope.
I'm on Twitter at Zeke Palermo, ZekePalermo. Will Hall, we hear you might be looking for work. We need an editor. And it sounds like you might be qualified for that more so than you are for coaching.
Damn.
So hit me up there, Will. I'm awaiting your DM.
Another person who might be free soon to become an editor, because I don't think the pro thing's going to work out. Grayson McCall, if you want to come on and edit, cut us up into little TikTok shorts, you'd save me a hell of a lot of time. You can find the show on X at Warm Weather Fans. You can email questions, comments, whatever you want into the show, warmweatherfans@gmail.com. We are on YouTube. Check us out there. You can find me personally on X at Watch the Stone. We will be back next week to go over all of the games we just talked about and look ahead for Week 6. This has been Warm Weather Fans, the Sunbelt Podcast.